Welcome back. Happy to be with you. Just finished up our interview with Josh Gallion, and I think he's doing some really good work. Some of what we talked about at the end there about I have always been very skeptical of a lot of our economic development programs. Some of these just seems like we're just doling out money to people who were going to do business in our state anyway. I like that. The one thing I struggled with was his explanation for adding those words to Stark County's response. I don't think there's any justification for it.
Yeah, I said, well, first of all, I think the Doge thing and the TOJ, I'm interested in what TOJ stands for, but we ran out
I
of
think
time.
it's Task Force of Government
Okay.
Efficiency.
Well, if it's called a task force, it's going to get something done. That's one thing I know what government task force is. But I think one of the things that didn't get mentioned, but when we're talking about the people looking at the Commerce Department, I think Matt Fern, our producer, deserves some credit for calling attention to the one North Dakota Film Grant program. I think that's just a
Sure.
small
Yeah.
component of something that's much, much bigger. But going back to Stark County, I think I struggle a little bit. I mean, on one hand, Josh is saying, I told them they knew this was being added. And then the auditors in the paper are saying something different. I don't know who's right and who's wrong.
He says he's got an email. He says he's got an email exchange that justifies it. I don't know. Like, if it's not something that they want to be, I would never add words to a quote.
Right.
No, if I write my interpretation of what I think that quote is or how it fits in with other information, I'm going to write it, but that's going to be in my voice, not theirs.
So my first planned question for Josh was going to be, I've been involved in audits before. And if somebody would change my manager response to an audit, what I would do is fire the auditor. But then he got into the sort of, they knew, we didn't know, whatever. And so it's hard to even know what the facts are there. And the auditor might have gotten herself into a little bit of trouble by agreeing to it. And then the board, the county commission didn't like that she agreed. So who knows what's going on? What I do know is, got to follow the law. And I worry that there's no teeth at all to actually make political subs follow the law. And I also think the county commission in Stark County, I know some of those folks, they're really, really good. Conservative.
Well, I don't know even though that their explanation, it's not like it's wrong. It's not like they're being crooks or doing something
It's
terrible.
illegal.
I just don't think the law allows them to do it that way.
Right.
So it's not like they're doing it so that somebody's brother-in-law can get a contract. It's nothing like that. It's like a very procedural thing, and they're just not proceeding correctly in accordance with the law. But again, I mean, I don't think that they're doing anything necessary. Maybe even this is a reasonable way to address it, but the law just doesn't. I just don't see where in the law it allows for that, and that's problematic. And I do think, to the auditor's point, where if they could kind of exceed these caps, then it maybe allows them to get around some things that would normally require them to go to the voters to get approval for. Now you're not just subverting that specific piece of law about the cap. Now you're subverting other law that would require you to go and get authorization from the voters to do certain things. I mean, that's why that law's got to be in there. How do you enforce it? I don't know. How do you enforce a law like that when the local prosecutor is also the attorney for the county? Yeah. I don't know what the mechanism is.
But also, is the law sort of dumb if you can earmark the money for specific uses and still keep it in the same way? I mean, I always say you can earmark
maybe
money.
the law is dumb. I mean, maybe the law is dumb, and they ought to just let them.
And again, I have some sympathy for the people in Stark County. I mean, they've been through the economics ups and downs of oil in the past. I mean, some of those folks might be thinking we have to have reserves that are really high because God knows what's going to happen with oil prices.
Right. No, I don't blame it. And none of this is Josh's fault. Josh is his job. This is what the law says. This is what you're doing. These things are intention. His office is absolutely right. If the law's dumb, that's a problem for the legislature.
Yep.
To fix.
And we want an auditor who's going to go out and look at this stuff and whatever.
Sure.
But again, I think your question about what does this do for relationships with political subs and trying to have less of that conflict, this doesn't help.
No, I think there was a way to accomplish what he was trying to accomplish without just adding the words in as if it was part of their statement. Maybe they need to put check boxes on the form or something. Do you agree or disagree? And they can mark one and then offer their response. And then if they don't, but I mean, at some point, I mean, I've dealt with people who just won't answer a question directly.
Yeah.
And if they don't do that, I just note it. Like I asked them, this is what they said. I don't really feel like it was answering what I asked. And then you have to move on. But at some point you have to accept they said what they said. And now Josh says he has email correspondence that further makes his case. I have not yet seen that.
But also, I think that to your point, they can respond to the responses even if they say we agree, or they don't say I agree. I mean, I didn't get the sense from him there's anything other than their internal processes is why they can't respond to a response. And maybe that's the cleaner way to do it without changing people's words.
I agree. What else we want to tell you? Want to talk about the Ethics Commission a little bit? There's a standoff about appointing 3 new members to the Ethics Commission. It's gotten a little bit interesting. And it's what's frustrating to me about that situation, Chad. So the state constitution requires a consensus between the governor, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Senate Minority Leader. That's Kelly Armstrong, David Hogue, and Kathy Hogan, respectively. They have a consensus on 3 appointees. I think it's former OMB Director Pam Sharp, a gentleman who works for an engineering firm in Mandan, whose name is escaping me, and a Fargo attorney, Mark Western. They all 3 agree these are fine candidates, but Hogue and Hogan want Murray Sogsveen, who is a current member of the commission. They want him to be one of the 3 appointees. The Governor Armstrong has said absolutely not. I'm not reappointing him. And his justification for that is he feels that the Ethics Commission currently has been doing something, and I agree with this, frankly, has been doing some things that are beyond their legal remit, and thinks Sogsveen is going to continue to enable that and doesn't want to appoint him. So that's where the standoff is right now. As we're recording this, there has been no movement on that. They could solve this very quickly. In the meantime, I brought up another issue. The terms for the existing members of the Ethics Commission are up, yet they continue to meet as a part of the commission, which I don't think they have legal standing to do that. They don't have lawful appointees right now. They don't have a quorum, which I think, frankly, should ought to light a fire under the 3 deciders on this and get them to get to a consensus so we can get the Ethics Commission back to work.
So I have a couple observations. One, I have great admiration for Murray Sogsveen. I know Murray. I think he's an extremely honorable person, military, National Guard, been appointed to a lot of different positions by Republican governors in the state, has a strong reputation of being a straight shooter and honest. I know you pointed out some things in your article about his time at the university system and maybe some stuff on the ethics. I'm ecstatic that Pam Sharp is willing to do this and that they've agreed to her, because I know Pam and I think she'll be tremendous on that board. I don't know the other 2 folks that they've agreed to. But just sort of taking a step back, I mean, it is amazing that when the Ethics Commission was set up, there was the guarantee of 1 Democrat, guarantee of 1 Republican legislator, and then the governor. And the reason they did that was to make sure that there's political consensus. I never came up with a scenario where it'd be the Democrat and the Republican disagreeing with the Republican governor on who the appointee should be. Right? I always thought it'd be the Democrat who was sort of holding out.
I think for Hogue, there's a personal connection there to Sogsveen. They both have a shared National Guard. I know Mr. Sogsveen is well respected in those circles. I think the problem that the governor has is just the status quo at the Ethics Commission. Yeah. Wherein, we're not exactly seeing a lot of public. I mean, I know they say that they're resolving things behind the scenes, and maybe the fact that we can't see that's not really their fault. But we've had 1 ethical finding issued in 7 years, and it was issued a year after that person was convicted of the crime. That is their primary purpose. I don't know that they're doing it all that well. And meanwhile, they're issuing legal opinions without the legislature weighing in, without the courts or the executive branch weighing in. They issue an opinion that makes it legal to spend campaign funds on something like childcare. This despite a constitutional prohibition on using campaign funds for personal purposes. I don't think it's unreasonable for the governor to look at that situation, among other problems, and say, I don't like the status quo. I want 3 fresh people. I don't think that's an unreasonable position.
So first of all, I would say is, we can talk about the pace of their investigations, and we've talked about that at length on here. maybe they're not moving fast enough, but I also believe the legislature has done everything in their power to underfund them, so they fail.
But Kelly Armstrong's not the legislature.
No, correct, but to the point about the pace
and that was a point I paid out. I think both the legislature and frankly, I think our Attorney General Drew Wrigley's at times bombastic response to some of what's going on in the Ethics Commission, I think has kind of left Kelly in a bad position where he has to take this, what I think is a reasonable stand on its own, in the context of, malfeasance is probably a strong word from the legislature, but obstinance from the legislature vis-a-vis the Ethics Commission, I think it's left Kelly with a weaker hand than he could have had.
So let's do some analysis here, though. We both know Kelly Armstrong relatively well. He's been to several meetings where he said, I'm never voting for Murray Sagsveen. He's never going to vote for Murray Sagsveen. I mean, there's no political pressure. I can't imagine a scenario where Kelly's now going to go into a meeting and say, okay, I agree that we should appoint Murray Sagsveen. So that leaves us where you started. They've agreed to 3 candidates for 3 open spots. That's where, I don't see any other scenario where they land anywhere but with those 3, unless, because the governor's not going to respond to calls to his office saying, please appoint Murray Sagsveen. There's not going to be enough where this becomes the normal voter's not paying attention to this thing. You can't put enough political pressure on Kelly Armstrong.
Well, and in some ways, I think that because we're seeing some activists, Ellen Chafee is, she was part of the group that instituted the Ethics Commission. She's been doing some things. Dustin Goverlow, who's kind of a gadfly person, he's sent out some emails encouraging people to call in. To me, that's turning the Ethics Commission into exactly what it was never supposed to be, which was this political entity. And I am struggling with the argument that somehow Murray Sagsveen, whatever you think of him, is like this singular entity on which the future of the Ethics Commission hinges, when the 3 people who are making this decision have already agreed there's three other people among the finalists who are just fine, would do a fine job in their estimation. And again, what the Constitution requires is consensus. Like that word is used in the Constitution. Consensus means everyone agrees. So that doesn't mean the governor has to cave and go along with the other 2. That means they have to find a consensus, and they have. Let's move on.
So, Rob, what's the rationale for them not to just appoint 2 of the 3? Was it the governor who said either we do all of them or we do none of them?
I think part of it I think gets into, because I've been thinking a lot about this when I wrote about whether or not the Ethics Commission has been meeting legally and whether they have a quorum. And I think Kelly's problem is, if you give them back a quorum, then the Ethics Commission can just sally forth and they can filibuster the last pick in perpetuity, because the Ethics Commission can continue functioning. Now, I guess the opposite argument of that, and I heard some people saying, well, this just allows, the politicians to obstruct the Ethics Commission if they won't make the appointments. Yeah, but on the other hand, it also allows the Ethics Commission, which tried to put their finger on the scale about that. And I think this is another thing that the Ethics Commission really did poorly, is they wrote a letter asking for Sagsveen's reappointment. And they also, when they first announced the vacancies, they announced 2 vacancies, but didn't announce Sagsveen's vacancy because they just assumed he was going to be reappointed. It's not their decision to make. It's not the Ethics Commission's decision to make. I think they overstepped there. But I think the dynamic is there needs to be some pressure on making a decision here. And if you just appoint 2, I think it takes pressure off, and I think that's wrong. They need to just make the decision and move on.
So my concern here is this is starting to feel like the North Dakota PERS board to me, in terms of, if you remember, the PERS board sued the state, and that led to the Christmas tree bill.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. And then it wasn't just for you, it's for the listeners as well. And then the legislature went ahead and changed who's on the PERS board. They did wholesale changes on the PERS board, fired the executive director, Scott Miller, and then all of a sudden the lawsuit went away, right? I mean, all those things. I feel like there's sort of something similar happening with the Ethics Commission. Let's change who's on the ethics board. They want to fire Rebecca Binstock. I mean, Drew Wrigley said it. Well, Drew Wrigley didn't say that, but he said that. And then there's potential, you've talked about the potential lawsuits regarding the Ethics Commission and you know, the North Dakota legislature does not like when people push back on them too hard from a government board, or like that's not what they like. And they're not above changing the outcome by changing the participants on a board. And I fear that's what's going to happen, just like what happened.
But again,
with the
this
PERS
isn't
board.
the legislature. The legislature has nothing to do. This is an entirely separate. In fact,
Well,
the only two legislators who are involved in this are kind of on your side of the argument.
Bigger picture, though, Rob, I'm talking about the underfunding, all of these different things. And
Right.
But I don't know two of the three people they've got consensus on. So this all might be garbage, and these two people are not going to come in there and do wholesale changes. But
I mean, why are we assuming that wholesale changes would be a bad thing? I mean, again, when we're not seeing progress, we're not seeing. We've seen a big breakdown. I mean, whether you want to, and listen, I've had plenty of blame for the legislature. I'm not exonerating the legislature's obstinance in this at all. But it's also a two-way street. And I don't think it's helpful when, if you're the legislative lawmaking branch, you are going to be annoyed when another upstart branch of government appropriates to themselves the power to legislate, which is what the Ethics Commission has done.
The upstart government agency.
Upstart insofar as they are exceeding their constitutional bounds. The Constitution assigns the legislature the power to write law.
Yeah.
But the Ethics Commission has written law, have they not?
Yeah. So
previously, I think we all would have said it's illegal to spend campaign funds on childcare or something like home security. And now you flip around and the Ethics Commission waved a pen and waved a magic wand, and now it's legal.
Yeah. So I'm not opposed to wholesale changes. I think the wholesale changes should be to fully fund the Ethics Commission and give it a chance to work.
But that's an argument for the legislature.
Sure.
The governor, he can't. I mean, he can write a budget and he can make recommendations, but the legislature is going to do what they're going to do. His only option, I guess, he could have vetoed the Ethics Commission budget, but does that help?
No. It doesn't help. And again, I think that there's blame to go around here. I think the flames were fueled by Drew Wrigley last session by being so aggressive. And now Kelly Armstrong and Marie Sagsveen are the two people sort of sitting at the table. With all that being said, like at some point, they just need to not be in the media. The Ethics Commission just needs to function, and not everything has to be a fight. And I like Maurice Sagsby, and I think he's an honorable guy. But if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not just. Although I think it's an important one, it's not just the opinion about using campaign finances for childcare. It's some other stuff too. There was right down to the last hours of the legislative session, there was a fight over campaign finance reform. The legislature was absolutely wrong in exempting itself from some of the reporting requirements. And in fact, I think violates the section of the Constitution that created the Ethics Commission. All that being said, the fact that the legislature failed to act in that way does not give the Ethics Commission license to begin rewriting campaign finance funds and then also appropriating to themselves oversight over campaign finances that the law already assigns to the Secretary of State's office. Because you got to remember, they're in conflict with Secretary of State Michael Howe, who is not an unreasonable person, who in fact cares very much about getting better campaign finance data. He lobbied long and hard with it. As a matter of fact, at like 3:00 in the morning, he and I were still texting on that last day of the legislative session, watching in awe of what was happening on campaign finance stuff. So,
and he and his office got the crap beat out of him at the end of the session.
But now the Ethics Commission's in conflict with him too. So you say that you're afraid of wholesale change. I think some change would be very, very good.
I didn't say I'm afraid of wholesale change. I'm afraid.
Okay, sure.
I want wholesale change that's different than the wholesale change that I think we're going to get. Fund them, Rob.
I don't know.
Give them the staff that they need. That's how the wholesale changes we need.
Sure. I'd be okay with that. But also, I think that maybe the funding will be more forthcoming if the legislature is not perceiving the ethics commission as exceeding some of their bounds in some of
I think
this
that's
ways.
completely fair.
Yeah. All right, we're going to end it there.
And I think we can both also agree that Kelly Armstrong isn't backing down because he gets 25 phone calls.
Yeah, you're not. They're just. Yeah, you would think that David Hogue, of all people, after watching what happened during the property tax debate, might realize the governor's not going to budge on this.
Skin in the game, if you recall. Skin in the game.
Skin in the game. Yeah. Well, again, they've agreed on 3 people. I'm assuming Kathy Hogan and David Hogue agreed to those 3 people because they liked what they saw. Then, approve those people. All right, we got to end the show. Leave us a voicemail. Send us a text, 701-587-3141. Follow us on all the social media things, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, X. Our handle is Plain Talk ND. Thank you so much for listening. By the way, we created some additional bonus social media content, which is Chad and I reacting to baseball stuff. So keep an eye out. That'll probably be dropping.
Yeah, and you'll like it because it makes the Dodgers look good and the Yankees look incompetent.
It does. I need to talk to Matt about choosing clips that make my Yankees look idiotic. That wasn't very much fun.
I'm not sure it's the clips that make them look idiotic.
Okay. All right. We're going to go. Thank you for listening. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening. I, however, am fresh as a daisy and ready to go.